Whew, that was quite a heck of a lot more racing for that since yesterday. So yeah, hey everyone, this is me, Sonic the Hedgehog here, and we are back for some more of the Maxi Toys, and welcome back for some more of Sonic's Game Gear Marathon. So yeah, as far as you guys should already know, is that yesterday that Sylvester has now recently finished Sonic Drift 2, and that was about it for all of these Sonic games being released on the racing games for the Sega Game Gear itself. But even then, it was a quite thrilling experience all in all, but even then, that as a matter of fact, that he actually done the flawless run through, despite there are some plenty of questionable mistakes here and there, despite the fact that he's already gone through all the cups already. But even then, let's just go say that right now, we'll get into more topics and during the overall and during the final day, particularly in the final day, the actual August. Yeah, that's all I can really say about this, yeah. So, yeah, so we've pretty much gone through, I would say, I've practically gone for, more accurately, 7 games done. So even though we only got about 4 more left, excluding one that we will discuss more today as soon as we actually, discuss some more topics during that time. So even then, 7 games done and only 4 more to go. So the only ones remaining is actually forms of a somewhat bit of a isometric view game, as well as 2 Tails games, and the ones that usually involves around pre-rendered graphics. Just gonna say that much right now. But even then, though, you guys should know what I'm talking about here. But even then, that we're not gonna be doing all 3 of those during later time, because today, that Knuckles the Echidna is now going to be doing his probably considered to be one of the worst Game Gear Sonic games ever made, Sonic Labyrinth. Oh boy. Even then, it's going to be a little bit slightly more exciting, but even then, Knuckles is not going to like it. So, yeah, good luck with that, Knucklehead. Oh no, why this game? Why this stupid game? Oh, hey everyone, I'm Knuckles the Echidna here, and I'm from, of course, fan the likes of the Maxi Toys videos, and welcome to, ladies and gentlemen, the next installment of the Sonic's Game Gear Marathon. Next up, it was Sonic Labyrinth for the Sega Game Gear. Now, this game did mostly came around in 1995, around the same year as Sonic Drift 2 came around, also on the Sega Game Gear. In fact, between this game and Sonic Drift series, and even Sonic Triple Trouble are all the Game Gear exclusive titles, so there's no Master System re-release on here and there, so even that it's just only on the Game Gear. So, yeah, the thing is about this game, compared to any other Sonic games, if you ever played those types of games before, you know exactly what the gameplay aspect is a little bit too different to you. Basically, in Sonic Labyrinth, we're going to be exploring in this really weird isometric viewpoint type of game, very similar when Sonic 3D Flicky's Island came around on the Sega Mega Drive and the Sega Saturn. That, except the noticeable difference was, though, this time, is the fact that there's no jump, and even you can't run fast. So, what happens was, though, is that there's actually the story in this game that if you actually looked up on the US version of Sonic Labyrinth's manual, which even then, though, if you manage to find all of that, then you're able to understand what the plot itself actually begins with. So, even then, that we'll get into that as soon as we actually get into the latest levels of the game. Although right now, the first zone in this game was actually forms of the Labyrinth of the Skies, and even then though, it takes place in the skies, obviously, because you can see this little abundance of clouds in the background. But basically the entire gameplay itself, especially the actual goal of the game itself actually works, is that you have to grab these 3 keys in each level. And every time you grab 1 key, you expand your time limit. So as you can see, although granted though we finished that level already, but when we get into the next level, there's actually a time limit in this game. You know, very similar to the ones in the other Mario games on one hand. But except you don't actually deal with true platforming, because instead it's more accurately a puzzle platformer type of game. But yeah, as you can see, I managed to get hit by an enemy, Yeah, rather than actually taking rings, well, not until it gets to the 4th act in each zone, that if you manage to get hit by an enemy, you lose time. So even then though, you do have some time to work with, but at the same time that the controls, I have to admit though right away, is that the controls themselves are incredibly stiff. Which even then, as far as the title suggests, we're actually walking in a Labyrinth maze, and at the same time, you have to deal with a lot of slowing movement for Sonic this time around, because what the entire premise of the game is all about is that if you actually looked up on the game manual, what happens was though is that Dr. Robotnik decided to actually swap Sonic's shoes this time around, because he managed to create himself a slowdown shoes for Sonic, because basically what happens was in the actual story of the game is that Sonic himself actually got himself his own house. Well, before when Sonic and the Secret Rings came around, that Sonic actually got himself his own house as well. But the thing is about this game this time is the fact that, well, basically after when Sonic is fall asleep in his house, and during the nights though anyway, accordingly. But even then, what happens was though is that Dr. Robotnik is just about to be had enough, and even then, all he does instead this time is that he obviously recognized when, you know, Sonic managed to defeat all sorts of Eggman's robots all the time. So even then, what he does this time is the fact that he actually decides to change the Sonic shoes into the slowdown shoes. And even then, though, he decides to swap those shoes into the, you know, the Eggman's creations of his power-up, or in this case, the, you know, the slowdown shoes to begin with. By the way, before we actually can go into continue of the story itself, prepare yourselves a lot of this seizure imagery, as you can see, because although I will discuss more details onto the power-ups themselves once we actually proceed to the game, but I digress. So what happens was though is that in the next day, that Sonic managed to discover that his movement is actually a little different. Because if you couldn't tell, that he's now obviously has to work on with the slowdown shoes this time around. But in order to actually make it a little bit better, in this case, so you're actually able to actually runs himself fast again, is that he needs to collect these chaos symbols again. So even then, that's how the entire premise of this story actually works, even though I haven't described as well as it used to be. But still, I'm just really not looking forward to this particular game Let's Playing on, because of all the Game Gear Sonic games I've recently played, this is by far the worst game I've ever played. Well, at least the 3rd worst Sonic game I've ever played, at least. But even then, yeah. So, as you can see, we're actually on the first boss in the game already. Gosh, it's been 7 minutes already. But anyways, here we are on to the first boss in the game, which is, I believe, is more accurately a bully gorilla type of boss. And just like the ones in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 on the Sega Game Gear, this is easily the hardest boss in the game, and ironically enough, it's actually the first boss in the game, in this case, the very hardest boss in the game. Because as far as I can tell, because you will get hit by these really annoying black arms projectiles so many goddamn times, and then once you actually deal twice as enough hits on him, on your, you know, first attempt while doing this, you should be able to do it fine enough, but for first-time players, oh my god, I feel incredibly bad for you folks if you actually manage to stuck on this first boss in the game for the longest time. Which even then, that's, believe me, that can take you a lot of tries to actually deal with this piece of crap boss that this ever was. So, anyway. Here we go, on to the second Labyrinth zone in the game, which actually forms of Labyrinth of the Sea. So even then, the colored palettes doesn't usually, although the colored palettes themselves actually do change up a bit, the only difference was though between the sea and the sky labyrinths is the fact the actual themes themselves is actually a little bit different. But usually the level itself doesn't feel as like, you know. So I digress though. So yeah, there's one thing I have to mention about you guys about something is that each zone actually represents 4 different acts. 1 through 3 acts, they all consist of grabbing these keys types of stage. And then when we get to the 4th zone, actually, or in this case, the 4th act is actually represents the boss, which even then, self-explanatory, there are a grand total of 16 levels in total. So even then, that's, you're expecting that this game is easily the most shortest game in the Sonic's industry in the Sega Game Gear department. Well, I would say Sonic Chaos is almost felt as short as it used to be, but this game is a lot shorter than it used to be. So even then, because, you know, you have to deal with, you know, 16 levels in total, expecting 4 zones in the game, because even then, almost says something completely different, but I digress. So yeah, you get the idea that the entire premise of the game itself is a lot different, but even then though, that as far as the actual gameplay itself is standpoint, it does remind me of almost like I was playing Sonic 3D Flicky's Island at one point, but except the fact that, well, the major difference between this game and the likes of Sonic 3D Flicky's Island is the fact that, I found out that the platforming itself in Sonic 3D Flicky's Island, although it still is an isometric viewpoint game, but at least you could actually deal with some platforming as well as in terms of speed and just jump basically. But for this, you don't jump and run as fast as the likes of Sonic 3D was. But even then, there's one thing I need to point things out though, is that I usually kind of prefer 3D Blast. Oh gosh, she's the vision. God dang it, why is my eyes hurting? Come on, there we go. Thank you for, just, you know, let the Caesar vision just stops. But anyway, basically the entire power-ups in this game could be summed up as like this, is that if you grab the blue triangles, that actually represents your speed up, and the red triangles can be consist of the invincibility, or the invincibility, sorry, my tongue's has been a bit twisted right there, I do apologize. The invincibility theme, and also the yellow ones is actually consist of your time plus addition to that, because it comes in really handy if you actually have yourselves a hard time on these particular you know, Labyrinth stages like this. But even then, as far as memories goes, that's all I can really say. So and finally, the green ones can be summed up as like a random effect, which I'm pretty sure it can either sometimes help you and all that. Oh yeah, by the way, if you touch this lava right there, you'll also decrease your time. So even then, not to mention, if you manage to get hit by enemies, you'll also lose your time. So even then, that's consists of more accurately, that's all I can think about it. So, and also along the way, you're actually able to actually enter one of these doors, which every time you enter one of those doors, it can either sometimes lead you to the correct path, or other times it actually gives you a little bit of a dead end, which at one point, it doesn't seem that bad at this level in particular, but when we get to the near the end of the game, it gets really, really screwy and messed up, which even then, though, that may cause a lot of players seem to have a lot of issue with this. So, that's all I can really say about Sonic Labyrinth as far as I can see right there. So, yeah. Oh boy, Sonic, why'd you have to let me select or just let me play this game? I just prefer playing Sonic Blast a bit more because, well, expecting that, I'm pretty sure he's already confirmed that, Blossom's gonna tackle for that game instead of me. But even then, I don't have many issues with that, but why do I have to deal with this really annoying game like this? Actually, this is not actually the first time I've ever experienced Sonic Labyrinth. No, the first time I've ever experienced Sonic Labyrinth in general was actually in forms of the Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PlayStation 2, and also Sonic Adventure DX Director's Cut as far as the minigame collection unlockable. So, yeah, with that being said, that's all I can really discover about it. So as you can see, I've got 3 keys yet again, so yeah, you're gonna be doing that a lot of times. Although the only time you can only do it is, I believe you have to do it like 12 times in total, while the other 4 is considerably the boss level. So yeah, that's all I can describe it as far as I'm concerned with that. So as you can see right there, I'm constantly backtracking for a bit in this particular sequence there, because in order to get the best ending in Sonic Labyrinth is that there was actually a switch somewhere in this level in particular, in level 2-3, that you need to actually get into the cannon right there, and every time you get to the cannon, that it automatically shoots all the way up. But even then though, in order to actually get the switch, is that you have to hold the right button and then press the jump button at the same time until you actually decide to get to it. But as you can see, I'm having a really hard time on this particular bonus switch door in order to actually get to it, because, you know, again, how ridiculously stingy it was, because even then, I'm really not looking forward to replaying this game again. Well, usually that's what I was going to be thinking of, though, for the time being. So, anyways, if you probably couldn't tell already, that, I do apologize for this lack of uploads recently, because again, that it's not so much for the laptop issue, much like how it does it in the likes of Sonic Drift 2 Let's Play, but it's more accurately my, microphone, sorry, I can't really speak today, I really do apologize. But what happens was, though, is that my Rock Band microphone, somehow the plug on the USB just managed to came out, and plus it comes really loosely. So yeah, that's why this is actually the 3rd time recording this, which it feels a little bit too painful, because, you know, I'm just not looking forward to actually playing this game on commentary, and plus you might find my commentary a little bit awkward, but even then, help me. So anyway. So as you can see right there, I've managed to activate the switch. Thankfully, I managed to take me like 5 attempts to actually get to this darn collusion thing. But basically, this is the only bonus area you can actually get into, ladies and gentlemen, because there's only one bonus area in the entire game. What's odd about this is that you only get like 8 rings in total in this particular level. And even then, though, every time you grab a regular ring, as you can see, I managed to get myself not only 1, but 25 rings in a individual ring itself. So yeah, it can be really generous with extra lives, especially with rings like this. But in order to actually let the bonus stage to be over is by simply have to let your time run out, or simply just fall off the actual stage. So thankfully it doesn't kill you, thankfully, until we actually get into the latest levels, until the 3rd zone of the Labyrinth level. But even then, we'll get into that in a moment. So yeah, you're probably expecting that there's going to be a lot of times there I'm going to be slowing down most of the time. Well, at least thankfully though, you can go in the fastest thing in life still, thanks to the spin dash, because yeah, Sonic actually gets himself the spin dash, the only ability you can only get in this game. But even then, that's the only positive side of things, but I digress. So yeah, every time when you get to the 4th act in this particular zone, you actually come towards this little giant slant area, and at the same time you're grabbing rings in the process here and there too. Which even then can actually help you a bit, especially noticeable if you actually get yourselves a freebie extra life to begin with, because as you can see, that these rings are very easy to grab, while sometimes they might be too much misjointed to actually grab those at the same time for me. So even then, I managed to grab myself an extra life in the process. So even then, it might be impossible to actually get them all, but I digress. Alright, here we're on to the second boss of the game, which actually forms of the crab shell, or the clamshell crab. Now, he's pretty simple and very easy compared to how it does in the first boss in the game, actually. Because the thing is about this boss in this particular point is the fact that in order to actually attack him, is that you have to deal with the spin dash system. And then every time when his clamshell opens up, especially noticeable his weak spot, that's you'll deal the damage. So even then, and also not to mention that these rings doesn't usually go disappear, unlike the first boss in the game, actually. Because, you know, if you manage to get hit in the first boss in the game, then all these rings will be gone for good. But thankfully in this boss in particular, it doesn't happen. So even then though, what I found is super strange is that every time you defeat the boss, you actually get one of these oddly shaped chaos emeralds, which even then, yeah. And by the way, if you grab the artificial rings, you get yourselves 25 extra rings, which is, you know, very generous with these rings at times. So here we go, folks, on to the 3rd zone in the game, which actually forms of Labyrinth of the Factory, aka my least favorite world of the game. Well, it's not so bad in Act 1, because there's not much anything hazardous to be involved in it, but when we get into Act 2, oh my god, that level I absolutely despise the most. But even then, though, you see why when we actually get into it, so... Well, thankfully, though, we're actually in the halfway point of the game already, because as far as I'm aware, that much like Sonic Spinball, and especially noticeable in Sonic Chaos, is that this will run about 2 parts. So even then, though, that will be kind of a common sense, which even then, yeah, that's all I can really think about it. But even then, still, we're going to be slowing down a lot, even especially noticeable, yeah. And as you expected, much like in, oh yeah, by the way, if you go off to the edge over there, this is a bottomless pit, so you don't want to overshoot on these kinds of stuff. What I found is really bugging me about this particular zone in general is the fact that every time you get to the platforms, as you can see, that what happens was though is that sometimes I'm actually feel a little bit panicky right there, because especially noticeable how the fact that if I was going to be safe or not, but well, I'm usually safe right now. But the fact is that every time when I see the flickering shoes over there, sometimes the game tells me that it might just start to trick me. Well, luckily though, it doesn't usually, I don't feel as panicking as it used to be. So even then, that unlike in Sonic 3D Flicky Zion, I don't have seen that much problem with, despite there are some collision detection issues on this journey on the isometric platforming segments. But even then, in this game in particular, it won't be so bad, but it's just a little bit too much of a chore for me. So even then, that's why I consider this to be the 3rd worst Sonic game I've ever played, next to Sonic the Hedgehog Genesis for the Game Boy Advance, and even Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric. Oh my god, I absolutely... I'm sorry, I just can't stand that game very well. But anyway... Here we go to the worst level in the game for me, levels 3-2. The reason why I hate it, because you know these platforms, as you can see I mentioned earlier, well, they are entirely based off of from that. So even then though, in order to actually get to one island to another, you must able to actually get into the actual platform itself. And then I'm not going to grab the power up again because especially noticeable the red ones and blue ones because again, seizure vision. So yeah, you can get a lot of seizure visions when this is happening. So even then, that can get a lot of pain and you know all that stuff. So yeah, by the way, be careful of this bumper right there, because that can really annoy you a bit, especially noticeable that this was before when Super Monkey Ball came around, specifically the first game and the second game on the GameCube, that if you get hit by bumpers, you get knocked over by the stage a lot. And by the way, this is how you die in this game, so even then though, that there's another point you do die right there, although I didn't meant to do that, I meant to keep that in the video, but you know, that's kind of stinks and sucks, because you know, I absolutely hate this level, so... Because, yeah, you're going to be spending most of your time waiting throughout the entire level, but it's just saying that, in order to actually just wait for the actual platform to come by, you must able to either can wait until it reappears, while other times you have to wait until it goes back again. So even then, that can really bug me off the most. And then, no matter what, though, I think this is the only level I actually got into whenever I first time playing through Sonic Labyrinth on my first time around, specifically on the Sonic Adventure DX compilation. So even then, though it's not so bad what I was doing right now, but for first-time players, they might get confused with this, so... In fact, every single aspect about this game I found is really, really damn dull, and even then, that's what I could really describe about this game, to be honest with you. Well, thankfully though, until we actually get into the third act in this particular level alone, it won't be as bad as it usually compared to this level as ever was, because oh my god, every time when I was gonna be getting into the correct path, specifically trying to get these last 3 keys, but even then if I would come towards that platform over there, or even the other platform there, as you can clearly see why I did die earlier ago, but even then I've accidentally did, so even then, there goes the first step of the playthrough as always. So yeah, that's all I could really think about it. And there's also another point you can die in this game, is the form of, not to mention, with this level alone actually contains a bottomless pit. Also, another point you do die is when a time runs out, and even the boss battles themselves. So, anyway, so I'm gonna have to end things off here. So join me next time on Let's Play Sonic Labyrinth. It's about that we're hoping going to finish up with this game by the forms of level 3-3. So see you guys next time. Later, fellas.